ride.
Want a lift?
Hey! Okay, dude, let's see what that jalopy can do!
What's a jalopy?
First off the line.
Yeah, I'm sure they're feeling pretty silly right now.
Hey guys, Zack here, and welcome back to Megas XLR. So this episode is interesting is that Coop kind of overthrows an oppressive tyrant of an alien planet, but there's a last minute twist to that. So the episode starts off with Coop revealing that he's been tinkering with it for all day, but explains how he's been experimenting with the sound system to kind of modify and make it more powerful, and that he actually ran it through Megas' quantum drive. And of course, Kiva then quickly points out that that is a very big problem for him to have created, pointing out that the last time he modified the sound system, it didn't end very well. And sure enough, we then get a flashback of the last time he modified the sound system, and long story short, all you need to know is that it broke every single window, or rather every single piece of glass within Jersey City. It literally destroyed everything, including little Timmy's glasses, who literally just remarks that it was cool because that's his catchphrase. But yeah, in case Coop points out that it'll be different, that that was just a prototype test drive, and that he'll actually have all the kinks worked out this time around. And sure enough, he presses the rock on button in Megas, but that doesn't wind up working, and he's very curious as to why it doesn't seem to be doing anything. At which point Jamie points out the front window and says that he thinks he figured out why. And sure enough, Coop actually wound up summoning a wormhole by accident, which proceeds to then suck Megas in, and Coop, Kiva, and Jamie then proceed to get sucked to another planet that they don't fully understand where they are. And sure enough, they're complete. And sure enough, Coop is completely lost and has no idea where they are, and even Kiva has no idea where they are, and then proceeds to reveal that yes, Coop did indeed get sucked into a wormhole, and explains how it kind of just spit them out wherever. And of course Coop points out that that's good, pointing out that they can just kind of reverse it. But of course Kiva points out the very obvious problem that the wormhole just kind of opens wherever it wants and spits them out wherever it wants, and they have no real way of knowing where they're supposed to be. And sure enough, when Coop tries to undo what he did, it doesn't work. He tries to hit the rewind button on his DVD play, on his well, not the DVD player, but what is it, on the radio. He tries to hit the rewind button and hit the playback button, but it doesn't work either. And Coop pointing out that he doesn't seem like he knows how to fix it, then asks Kiva if she can fix it, and of course she doesn't, since they need to first figure out where they are and ask directions. And it's at this point where Jamie points out to the very obviously menacing robot that's currently stumbling toward them, and points out that the robot is, and points out that maybe they should ask him, and the very deadly robot that's trying to fight them. And Coop, sure enough, then picks himself up and tries to get ready to fight the very dangerous looking robot. But what we quickly find out is that the robot isn't dangerous at all. It just kind of stumbles off in whatever it was doing, in whatever direction it was going, and briefly pardons itself. And I should mention, this thing is very menacing. It's holding a what is it, a sickle, and it has a very menacing looking design, but it isn't really threatening to any of them. It just looks at Coop a little bit, pardons itself, and then walks off. And Coop is initially annoyed that it just blew him off. But Kiva points out that that's actually a good thing. Jamie just points out that that's a good thing, since usually when they fight giant robots, it results in them having to destroy a couple, and then they get in some serious danger. And pointing out that if the robot doesn't seem to care about them, that it's probably fine. And does offer that they decide to go home. But Kiva does point out that they don't know where home is. So Coop has no choice but to follow after the robot and ask directions. And sure enough, what we find out is that there's actually an entire commune of robots out here on the planet. And of course, several of them are actually planting flowers and growing plants and picking things in the garden. And it's just a really weird juxtaposition of things. It's this very peaceful thing, and yet there's these giant robots that are just walking all over the place, cleaning everything up and making everything look pretty. And of course, Coop immediately wonders if any of them know where directions are, and he asks one of the robots, a robot with a 32 on its chest, if he knows the directions for Earth. And And of course, the robot seems to respond to Coop's question, and its eyes briefly flicker from blue to red, as if it seems to remember Earth, but doesn't seem to be able to know how to actually get there. And it's a very strange thing. But of course, Coop becomes a little confused as to how exactly it isn't able to actually respond, and even tries to kind of explain what Earth is. And of course, the robot is trying to remember, but it doesn't really know. But it is weird that its behavior is a little off. But in case another robot, the robot that we just met, number 14, he then proceeds to ask Megas, who he believes to be number 12, because and this is the thing, both Coop and Megas have a number 12 on their design, and we finally get an explanation as to what the number 12 actually means. So of course, the robot mistakes him for number 12, and asks it and asks Megas why it would want to leave. But of course, Coop points out that it isn't really a number, although it has a very similar design to the other numbers on the other robots. But he does point out that, as it turns out, number 12 is actually Megas' racing number, and it has nothing to do with the fact that it's a prisoner or anything. But which has a fun little detail, and it does make sense. This is Coop's ride, so obviously him painting a number 12 on to make it look cooler is very much in character for something he would do. But of course, he also proceeds to ask number 14 if he's ever been off planet, pointing out that he can fly. And sure enough, number 14 doesn't even remember that he can fly. And the first thing he does is actually reactivate his jetpack and start flying around. But then he's immediately shot out of the air by several Cyclopean robots who all have a similar design. I'm not even sure if I'll be able to find a picture of them, but they have a very cool design. I do kind of like them. But of course, the robots immediately shoot down number 14 and then proceed to grab number 32 and electrocute him and fry his systems, which Coop quickly points out as a problem, pointing out that they did nothing wrong and that all he was doing was trying to ask directions for them. And of course, asks the other robots to actually help fight back against what is apparently the guards of this planet. But of course they immediately cower, and the guard robots point out that they know better than to mess with them. At which point the enforcer robots try to fry Megas' systems, and Coop is barely able to dodge out of the way for several minutes until eventually one of the robots gets lucky and does successfully fry its systems, and Megas eventually goes down with Coop, Jamie, and Kiva in it, And of course, with what they call the uprising neutralized, the robots then proceed to scoop up number 32 as well as Megas, and point out that Clara will want to see them personally. And sure enough, they then bring them to the main facility of the planet, which is very out of place. Is seemingly very out of place with similarly to the robots that are just running around guarding and stuff, But of course, the facility where Clara is situated is also seemingly out of place. It's just this large, dome-shaped metal structure in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the planet, and it just looks very out of place in contrast to all the lush scenic plant life that's just scattering around the facility. And sure enough, Coop is then Megas is then dragged into the facility by several robots, with Coop being unable to do anything, as is Kiva, because their systems are being fried. And it's at one point where Coop tries to get them out of there, but it doesn't work. And of course, he then proceeds to ask Kiva for help, points out that as long as their internal systems are fried, they're not going to be able to do much of anything. At which point we actually meet Clar. He is revealed to be the controller of the planet, and what we quickly find out is that he has a very big disdain for artificial intelligence and artificial life. And sure enough, number 30, there's actually a very large chair in the room where Megas is brought to, as well as number 32. And Clar immediately points out that he doesn't know why number 12 is causing such a problem, pointing out that he's being a very big problem today, but does point out that it ultimately won't matter, and soon he'll be able to fix him, and then proceeds to have number 32 brought to the chair, who is fighting the entire time. And what we find out is that number 32's more happy-go-lucky personality, where he's only really concerned with guarding. He's only concerned with guarding is really just the brainwashing program that Clara has introduced. As we find out, he's quickly put in a chair into a large robot chair made to house the robots, and is immediately strapped down. And then Clara activates a reprogramming system that causes number 32 to immediately forget who he was. And then and points out, and when Clark asks him what his purpose is, he tells him that his purpose is to serve and obey, which Clark points out is the very happy and become obedient mindset that they accept around there. And of course he then has Coop strapped down as well, pointing out that he's once again continuing to refer to him as number 12, which is which of course, even though Coop points out several times that his name is Coop and he is trying to get everybody to remember his name. But of course, Clark isn't really listening and points out that he points out that free thought is just dangerous here, and points out that obviously obviously he shouldn't be there disrupting everything for all the things that he's been trying to do. And Coop just points out that he was just kind of asking for directions, and then yells at Kiva, pointing out that this is what happens when they ask for directions. And of course, and it's at this point where Clark points out that he can't have him running around with his 3 thought and making more problems. So he immediately starts activating the reprogramming system. That's the word I'm trying to say. Reprogramming. But again, and of course, Coop quickly tells Kiva to hurry up and figure out how to fix their systems. But Kiva points out that she can't access anything, and Jamie points out that they better figure it out sooner or they're all going to be fried. But and of course, the machine then proceeds to activate and goes on to full blast. But what we quickly find out is that it actually has no effect on Megas. As it turns out, the machine is specifically designed to reprogram robots with artificial intelligence, and as Kiva points out, it doesn't affect Megas because Megas is a piloted robot and therefore has no artificial intelligence. And of course, Coop immediately boasts about this fact, pointing out that of course that there is no artificial intelligence for him to reprogram, and starts gloating about it to Clark. And Clark is very confused as to what's going on and doesn't fully understand why his machine isn't working until he actually sees Coop sitting in the front seat, and is very confused about the fact that there seems to be a robot being piloted by a human or another life form at all, which he does note is a little bit strange. And Coop does finally get through to him, pointing out that he's not somebody there that is supposed to be Clark's prisoner, and does point out that he isn't there to that he's only there to ask for directions and get off their planet. But Clark points out that even though Megas has already caused a bit of harm already, having destroyed several of his guards and has already caused an uprising in 2 prisoners to remember who they were. So for that, he has to now be destroyed. And sure enough, he then proceeds to drop him down a pit, which as Jamie quickly finds out is a giant conveyor belt leading into a crusher. And of course, Coop points out that this is probably better than brainwashing, but once Jamie despises the actual crusher, he points out that it probably isn't better than brainwashing, and of course, Coop is trying to get them out of there, but his key isn't working, and he's trying everything he can to actually get Megas to start up. But But of course, and after when he realizes that that's not working, he then asks Kiva for help, and Kiva, of course, immediately climbs into the main housing of Megas, pointing out that she may have to reset some systems down below, and of course she uses a bunch of sciencey stuff that basically means she's just going to jumpstart Megas, and of course Coop and Jamie look at her a little bit funny until she points out that that's what she's doing, at which point they give her the go ahead, and sure enough, Kiva then proceeds to climb around in the systems for a little bit. We don't actually see her doing any of that because we've already seen her do that before in a previous episode. But she starts climbing around inside of Megas' maintenance tunnels, and while Coop and Jamie just kind of make mental preparations that they may come to face with the Crusher, and Jamie concludes that hopefully at least it'll just be quick and painless. But then they find out that one of the robots that was actually down there and scheduled to be scrapped is, despite being missing several limbs, is still very much alive, and he goes into the system screaming. He goes into the Crusher, kicking and screaming, and is unable to escape and is ultimately destroyed. And that just kind of is scarring for a lot. That's a very scarring thing. But yeah, Coop and Jamie see that and realize, yeah, maybe it won't be quite as painless as they thought it was going to be. But yeah, that's just a terrifying thing that this episode decides to do. It's a little bit nerve-wracking to see, but you know. But in case Kiva does manage to fix Megas in the nick of time, and tells Coop to get them the hell out of there. At which point, yeah, at which point Coop then proceeds to create a giant mega-shaped hole in the facility. First and foremost, what he does is he smashes up the grinder so that no other robots have to be subjected to it. But more to the point, he then proceeds to punch his way out of the facility. He then proceeds to actually just punch a massive hole through this facility, which enables him to escape and land on the surface of the planet. At which point he's surrounded by several of Clar's guard robots, and Clar tells him that he won't be escaping quite as easily, at which point Jamie comments that if that was easy, then they're in trouble. And sure enough, all of the robots then proceed to fire several missiles at Megas, which seemingly destroys it at first, and the robots are satisfied with the fact that they've quelled the uprising, but then it's revealed that they barely scratched Megas like at all, and proceeds to actually destroy all the robots while Coop telling them to give it their best shot. And with that, he then proceeds to destroy all of Clar's guard robots and tells them that that's the best he's got, and asks him if he's got anything more. At which point, Clar points out that he's only got one thing more to show Megas, and proceeds to actually transform his base into a giant satellite. And immediately Jamie looks at it and kind of laughs at it, pointing out that maybe Clar's going to make them watch bad TV. But no, as we find out, that is how Clar is actually able to maintain peace across the entire planet with all the different robots, and that's why there hasn't been an uprising there. As it turns out, it's a giant satellite. The satellite dish that Clar has transformed his base into is able to tap into all the robot systems, and sure enough, he turns it on, and it causes all of the robots around the planet to actually stop what they're doing and come fight Megas. And of course, Coop initially thinks that maybe they're coming to help, but of course, Keith and Jamie point out that no, they're probably not. And of course, Jamie immediately tells Coop to smash all the robots, but Coop points out that he can't do that because they're the good guys. That he can't smash up the good guys, even though Jamie points out that it hasn't stopped him from doing something like this similarly before. But of course, Kiva then points out that the main thing they have to focus on is the satellite, pointing out that if they destroy it, that the robots will probably leave them alone and stop trying to hurt them. And Coop immediately points out that seems like a sound enough idea, and then proceeds to launch several missiles directly at the transceiver, which he points out will probably not hit the good guys, and that he doesn't need to actually hurt anybody. But sure enough, the robots, still very much mind controlled by Clar, then proceed to sacrifice themselves to protect this transceiver, and several of the robots we meet in the episode wind up going up to actually take a missile and wind up getting destroyed in the process. And Coop quickly realizes that maybe he should have been a little bit worried about them, but of course it's at this point where Clar points out that obviously Megas needs to be destroyed because, as he points out, free thought is dangerous on that planet. But at which point Coop goes into a signature trash talk about how he tried to scrap Megas, just brainwash a bunch of robots that did nothing wrong, and then also made him late for spicy nuggets, and then tells Clar he has one word for him: game over. Which of course Coop and Kiva correct him, pointing out that that's 2 words, but he points out whatever, and then proceeds to make a beeline through all of the prisoner robots and immediately toward the transceiver, where he uses Megas' energy sword to slice it in half and to freeze all of the robots that way. And of course, this causes the robots to finally be free of Clar and finally remember who they were and what they were supposed to be. At which point Coop goes to number 32 and asks him if he remembers the directions to Earth now. And sure enough, number 32 immediately gives them exact directions on how to go to Earth. And Coop, very happy about the fact that he can finally get directions to go home, thanks number 32 for his help. Kiva puts it into her computer, into the Megas' computer systems, and they're able to fly back home. At which point Coop puts Megas into cruise control, and Kiva then compliments him on the fact that he managed to save the world without destroying the planet. And Coop, of course, doesn't understand that she's complimenting him on it, so he admits that it'll be fine and that they'll just destroy a planet next time, which Kiva points out wasn't exactly what she meant. But of course, we then find out the actual twist of the episode, where as they're actually flying home, Jamie sees a satellite that reveals what the planet actually is. And what we find out, and this is revealed in the very end of the episode, is that apparently the place they were was an alien prison. and that they just accidentally released a bunch of very dangerous criminals into the world. And of course, Jamie immediately adds in a sarcastic, "Yeah, Coop, you're a real hero." But we then see that Clark very much was trying to keep all the alien robot prisoners from going free because they're all very dangerous robots. And Clark's reprogramming was the only thing keeping them from actually leaving the planet. So yeah, Clark turned out to be the good guy, and Coop just kind of helped the bad guys escape. And sure enough, number 32 then approaches Clark's station and tells him that yes, now he is free to actually go off and create conquest throughout the galaxy. And then proceeds to point out in order to honor his savior, he's going to start with Earth. And then sure enough, proceeds to tail Coop, Kiva, and Jamie home, where in the ending credits he actually briefly faces off against Megas, only for his programs to kick back in. And he winds up just wandering off into the woods. And it's implied that Clark eventually fixes his device and is able to actually get number 32 back under control. And it's possible he did that with the rest of the robots, and they eventually returned back to the planet. So yeah, Coop accidentally caused a huge problem. Coop. I should mention, he was entirely in the right with this. He knew that something shady was going on here. He just didn't understand what the actual purpose of where he was actually was. I should mention that. Obviously Clark had a very shady thing where he was like, yeah, I'm brainwashing robots, but Coop didn't fully understand the full story and proceeded to free several dangerous criminals that he didn't know were dangerous criminals. It's not Coop's fault. He didn't know the full story, but yeah, he almost destroyed the galaxy by just letting all of these robots go free. And Clark eventually fixes his transceiver and gets them all back under control. But yeah, very dangerous. Something bad almost happened because Coop didn't know the full story. And there's nothing wrong with that. Coop not knowing everything is part of his charm. Coop is very much your average dude. He's not going to go into full research about what he's actually doing and what he's actually supposed to do and what all the sides and stakes are. He's just one of those guys who's like, I see a problem in front of me. I'm going to solve it to the best of my ability. And he did. That's exactly his character. He didn't understand that these guys were dangerous criminals. He just saw a bunch of alien robots being oppressed and was like, I'm going to help them, and I'm going to free them from this guy who I'm pretty sure is evil. That's basically Coop's entire mindset. He's not a bad guy, but he has indeed freed several aliens, but he has indeed caused more harm than good. Even if he is trying to help. It's not really his fault, that's just how he is. But in case, yeah. That's got to be the review for Megas XLR. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only $10 a month. It does really help me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks out of my way saying thanks. So be sure to check those out. Link is down in the description. And finally, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out what's linked on the end screen for you guys. The top video is the most recent video. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the bottom video is actually the video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So if you want to try something new or see more of what you like, then be sure to check both of those videos out. And also, during the course of Courage Month, during the course of Megas Month, I've actually set it to play Courage Month, which is the first one of these that I did. And if you absolutely want to go see that one, by all means, again, link is down in the description. Go check that one out. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!